The Civil Rights Movement exposed a lot of the inequalities African Americans faced in the 1900s in the South. Through protests, marches, sit-ins, and even boycotts, activists were able to change how federal laws looked at civil rights issues. In this video, we are going to look at 4 big legislations passed in the 1960s that positively affected African Americans. They are the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Civil Rights Act of 1968, and the 24th Amendment. First, we will look at the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, gender, or national origin. This ended unequal segregation in schools, workplaces, and public accommodations. It was signed into effect by President Lyndon B. Johnson on July 2, 1964. Congress said that discrimination interfered with interstate commerce, equal protection of citizens, and the protection of voting rights set forth in the 14th Amendment. Next, there was the Voting Rights Act of 1965. This outlawed literacy tests, provided multilingual ballots, and prohibited the implementation of laws that would affect voting without pre-approval from the U.S. Attorney General. So why was this important? Remember, in many areas of the South, there were Jim Crow laws that prevented African Americans and other minorities from voting. This meant that they could not get their voices heard in the government. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 helped to ensure that everyone had access to the ballots. Then, there was the Civil Rights Act of 1968. It provided for equal opportunities regardless of race, creed, or national origin. It also forbade the use of force or threat of force to injure, intimidate, or interfere with anyone based on their color, race, religion, or national origin. This dealt specifically with renting, selling, or financing of housing. So what does this mean? This means that African Americans could not be kept from buying, renting, or asking for finance for housing. It was a crime to try and use force to keep people from housing. How was this a problem before? People were prevented from buying houses in certain areas, selling houses to certain people, and were prevented from getting loans to pay for their homes. Finally, there is the 24th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This says that the states cannot impose any form of poll tax or payment for federal elections. But what was a poll tax? A poll tax was a fee required in order to be allowed to vote. Many African Americans in the rural South could not afford to pay the poll tax and were thus prevented from voting. So what? What were the big ideas of these pieces of legislation? The Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed discrimination. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 outlawed literacy tests. The Civil Rights Act of 1968 dealt with renting, buying, and financing of housing. And the 24th Amendment dealt with outlawing poll taxes.